right, First Generation Talks, Dramos here, Radimus as always.
I am here as always, yeah.
Special guest today, comedian. You've seen her on Tiffany Haddish's They Ready Netflix special. Aida Rodriguez, welcome.
What's up?
How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
We appreciate you. I mean, how you been handling this whole quarantine we've been doing, first of all?
You know what? At first, I have my moments. Like I go up and down. Like at the beginning, I broke my wrist and my elbow, so I came into the quarantine with a cast on.
Oh no.
I went and got my cast, and the day I got my cast, we had the shelter in place order the next day. So it was a lot because I came from Canada. I was working. I fell on black ice, broke my wrist, my elbow, came back, got a cast, and then boom, in the house. La quarantena.
Right.
So, I mean, I've gone up and down. I think like everybody else, I miss, being able to go do stuff. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I've actually really enjoyed being in the house.
Yeah.
Away from people.
Well, the world is it's crazy right now.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm glad there's the internet because we can see people's crazy for who they are. But at the same time, it almost just fucks you up mentally. Like it's exhausting. It's like, damn, do I even want to be a part of all of this thing right now,
Yeah, no. I woke up this morning and my mentor, he's a friend of mine, and he's not a mentor. Like it's not like he's 70 years old, but he's one of the reasons why I went to college to Florida State. His name is Benjamin Crump, and he's an attorney for like Ahmaud Arbery's family, an attorney. So he always sends me stuff as it develops, right? And he sent me the stuff about the man in Minnesota that they choked to death. And I was just like, man, it's in broad daylight now. Yeah. It's like, even that lady in the park, they were holding the camera. She saw the camera and she was still like, she kept it buck, She was just like, I'm going to tell the police.
Yeah.
Right into the camera. So it's just like, she didn't feel she could have any consequences.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, the one in Minnesota, I saw that today as well. And for whatever reason, that one hit hard. That one might have hit the hardest.
Right.
I guess because it's in broad daylight, it goes on for so long. There's so many people around. There's so many other police officers around, and nobody thinks to tell a dude like, yo, maybe you should like lay off of him, even just for the sake of saving face. If you don't give a fuck about this guy's life, but the fact that you didn't care enough about saving face in front of a camera, there, you didn't care that much. You devalue that man's life that much that you didn't even care that people saw you doing that,
Yeah, it's become commonplace. And the reason why I'm so vocal about it, and people get very upset with me about it, but they do that to us too. Like we don't get a lot of people. So many people get unjustly murdered by the cops.
Yeah.
And by white supremacists throughout the day. There's not enough time. Luckily, some people have people there with a camera to get it.
Yeah.
Latinos also get murdered by the police. And the truth is that it shouldn't have to be a black person, a Latino for me to care, right? I should care I don't want to see a white person getting unjustly murdered by the cops. But it's just become so common, and it makes me feel like there's some sort of agenda.
Yeah.
When it comes to people of color,
Yeah, it's I don't even have words. All we can do is talk about it. You know what I mean? It's just like because
but that's part of it. That's part of it. Like it's like I was listening to Truth Serum. I was listening to the couple of episodes that you have up, specifically the first one where you go in on. Well, it was hard for you to even start the conversation because you're a mother of children. And there's a different intake of information when you're emotionally connected as from the mother's perspective. And it's like, for me, it's you see friends, you see people who have been killed. So then you're seeing certain news and things become so repetitive. And it's like almost anti-human, it feels like sometimes, to feel emotionally dull by it because it happens so frequently. But then at the same time, it's like, that's part of like finding strength. That's part of the revolution. It's like, no, like I'm not going to be worn out and allow this to be consistent, because that's how you have cases like in the park where the man is just uncomfortable because a woman has her dog loose, and she's like, no, it's happened 1,000 times that I'm always going to be right in these situations, and person of color is always going to be found wrong in some way, shape, or form. So it's like, man, I'm from Bed-Stuy. Like, I'm raised in, you know what I'm saying? Like, where it happens, like, and I'm one of many places in the world. And it's like, yo, like, if I allow my rise in communities of, like, you know, media, if it's music or whatever the case may be, and allow like the news and these occurrences to like stop me from speaking, then actually they have won. It's actually like finding ways to rise in your power and still be able to latch onto this message. And if anything, like you said, like be even more vocal than you were even before, because you know you have the responsibility to broadcast this perspective, like the POC's POV, you know?
It's important for people to understand that, you know, I think about it like I saw my uncles who are all Puerto Rican, they're all Afro-Latino, right? And I've seen all my uncles fight the cops. You know, I've been walking down the street, one of my uncles and the cop drive by. Where you going? What you doing? What's my whole life? Right? My grandmother slapped a police captain in Miami because they were beating up a disabled man in our neighborhood, Louis, who was ours. You know, when you in the neighborhood, everybody belongs.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah.
Right? And my grandmother was like abusador, and she slapped him, and they took her to jail. And I'm there with the social worker. But even now, like my daughter's friend from school got killed by the cops, an Iranian man that had mental issues, who had no clothes on. He was having a mental breakdown, and they shot him to death and killed him in Long Beach. He was in college. Now a comedian 2 weeks ago, Mark Brown, he was murdered by the cops on the freeway for not complying. So it's not even a news story anymore. Now it's, such and such just got killed by. So it's gotten closer to home. And now you sitting around thinking, oh shit, that could be us at any moment, you know? And so it's just, we have to activate ourselves. We idolize celebrities so much. We get so caught up in this superficial, materialistic world, when the truth is that that guy who was in the park went to Harvard. He was a bird watcher.
Right. Literally.
Bird watcher. And at any moment, that lady could have weaponized the police and had his life. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what status you think you have. To a racist person, that's all they see.
I mean, I wonder, I guess what the solution is. How do we bridge that disconnect that happens? And then I also wonder, I try to come from a place of understanding as well, you know? So I think to myself, how much of it is ignorance? How much of it is that somebody grew up in a bubble and just doesn't understand that maybe by saying that you're putting this man's life at risk? And how much of it is just kind of blatant racism? You know, I always wonder what the percentage of that is.
Well, I think that if we operate from the understanding that all white people are racist, we can be okay. And hear me out. That doesn't mean that they're all bigots and that they're all malicious. Yeah. It just means that racism is embedded in the system and you're born into it. So they teach us to hate ourselves and they teach them that they're better than us because that's how they control people, right? In the South during, after slavery, the way to mobilize poor white people was to tell them, at least you're better than black people. Right. Not you should have everything I have, the same that I have. It's you're better than the blacks and the Latinos. So understanding that we need to unpack this and people need to be educated on what racism is so that they don't actively practice it. Then we can get somewhere. But I love to hear white people say, "Oh, I live in Bed-Stuy. I'm not racist." Well,
it's like, what does that have to do with anything? Yeah.
No, because it's your racism that brings you there because you feel like you're claiming land that you think belongs to you and you want to take it back. And it's like, why should they be here? I work for a living. I could pay more money for this and I can afford it. That's racism, right? So I just think it's understanding, like my friends who are white will say to me, I practice every day not to be a racist because I understand that it's in me because of the way that we were brought into this. Now, my grandfather didn't design this shit. Yeah. But it's true. It's like, so in order for us to really have an honest conversation about racism, we have to be, we got to be transparent. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. They think that because they have black and brown friends, they have a black and brown niece and nephew, even I'm married to a black person. That doesn't, how could I be? You could be a racist if your mama is black. If
Right.
you saw the movie.
There's a lot of examples of that. Yes.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't. It's not about you being adjacent to people of color.
Mm-hmm.
It is you benefiting from being white at the expense of people of color.
Right.
But it's also even people of color are racist towards people of color, and that's what we experience heavily. It's like you can be a person of color and still be racist and still look down upon your own people. And it's like, and a lot of that is like education. I'm Dominican, so like we're one of the biggest. I mean, I think every country is the biggest at like colorism and discriminating like color and thinking that darker skin is like less quality than. And it's just like, man, like where's the education? But specifically, like how you said, like in forms of gentrification, like racism in the form of gentrification. I mean, for me, I was raised in Bed-Stuy and Bushwick, so like the only white people I grew up seeing were teachers and police. You know what I mean? And then after a while, then you start having like classmates. Like I go to college and I find out they're living in, off the 8 train on Fulton. And I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing there? Going to East New York, Canarsie, wherever. And, I had one specific incident where I met up with my friend who's like from DC, a Jewish man. And we went around and like, that's my homie. I genuinely believe like he doesn't have any inclination of like racism in him, but he can definitely understand where his privilege lies. And we walked around and it was like a very interesting and like kind of tough conversation where it's like, as a white man, how does he participate in not being racist? How does he is that something that white people should hold themselves accountable for? Or are we supposed to be active members in the education and the deconstruction of like what is given to them as like privilege? Because they don't even know that they're privileged a lot of the times. They don't even understand where the privilege lies. It's just like embedded, like you said.
The two things that bother me about oppressive behavior is, one, people of color being made to feel like them being oppressed is their fault. Right? This whole, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps. Why haven't you? That whole attitude. Right. The system is designed for us not to do well. And then the other thing is when they put the onus of the education on us, like when it's like, we have to be the ones to say, no, this is why it's racist. They have to take some accountability and some responsibility for their behavior, because the truth is that they benefit greatly because of our oppression. So they have to say at some point, it is my job. And I know there are a lot of people who do it. Like there's a group called the White Nonsense Roundup. It's all white people that work towards dismantling racism. And they go on social media when they see white people saying dumb shit, and then they address their own white people and say, this doesn't work. So I think that we have to, if you want to help somebody because you think they're a good person and you want to give them some information, that's cool, but it's not your responsibility. Because like me, like I want to help with the environment, right? And this is gonna sound crazy. Like I really want to help the environment because I feel that there's a gross abuse being done to animals and Mother Earth. But rabbits aren't responsible for telling me what I'm doing to them is wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know that that's a silly example, but it's just that fundamental when you expect people of color to tell you. And the thing is, some people don't want to hear. Like they don't want to. They think that they can tell you how you do it, right? Well, if you didn't walk around with a beanie on, then the police wouldn't pull you over. Right? You didn't wear your hijab, then they wouldn't think that's fucked up. Like I have to stop being who I am to make you
please
feel
you.
Based on what you think about me. And yes, Latinos are all victims of the same mentality, because the best way to hold people down is to divide them. So if you tell Dominicans that they better than Haitians and Puerto Ricans think of course, look at the dumb shit we say about each other. Do you think about Cubans, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans? Like we're all the same thing. We are a mixture of Africa, Taino Indians, and Spain.
Yep.
Yeah.
You look at all three islands, you will see a presence of all of that in there. You see the Africans, you see the native Indians, and you see the white people. And the funny thing is that for some reason, you'll hear Cubans say, oh, nosotros no somos como los dominicanos, que los dominicanos this. And then you hear the Puerto Ricans, oh, but we're citizens. Oh, we're citizens. And then you hear the Dominicans, oh, but we're not like, and it's so dumb because if you look at them and you do a study, like you go do those genealogy studies, you will see that we are the same.
Identical, yeah.
Yeah, we just have a different dialect based on how we were colonized. And so for me, it's important to unpack that because I get a lot of that, like, because I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican.
Yeah, like all of them, basically.
Yeah, but I grew up with my family, my Puerto Rican side. Yeah. So I have Dominicans always telling me, oh, you don't seem to be proud of your Dominican. Or the Puerto Ricans will be like, why you tell people you Dominican? You didn't grow up with. I'm like, it's my blood. Like, what are you talking about? It's so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're fighting a battle outside of ourselves, but then we're also fighting an internal battle as well. You know what I mean? Like, because there's colorism within the Latino community as well as just where you're from, and then even the Black community. You have people talking about, oh, you're being light skinned right now, things like that, and they say it in jest, but it has historical context to it. You know what I mean? It has a historical hate, and that's like self-hate that's happening. You know what I mean? So it's like we're hating on one another, and then we also trying to fight this outside battle as well. We do it to ourselves to a degree as well. We dig ourselves in a hole, you know, based on pettiness as well. I kind of feel like.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of, and you know what's funny is that the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico really humped Puerto Rico because there were a lot of Puerto Ricans that were, you know, Donald Trump supporters, and you see them with the Dominicans. You see the Puerto Ricans, you see the Cubans. And so Puerto Ricans were rocking with Donald Trump, not all of them, some of them. And then the hurricane hit, and then they were like, oh my God, can you believe he threw paper? But I'm like, did you see what he did to the Mexicans? I don't know if you think that they look at us as any different.
Right.
You know, our citizenship doesn't matter to them whatsoever. They still see Puerto Rico as America's bitch. Look at all of the injustices that they have committed on the island, right?
Yeah.
And so this whole thing that we're not like the Dominican Republic, because the Dominican Republic is a third world country. The Dominican Republic is on glorious warrior land. Hispaniola is where the fight for our freedom first took place. The liberation of the slaves kicked off in Haiti, but that was Hispaniola. So when we have these ideas of superiority with one another, and we have to educate our own, right? Because they teach us to hate ourselves. Yeah. You know, even my like Dominican relatives would say to me, oh, pero tú tienes pelo bueno, tú no eres como los dominicanos negros. I'm like, what the hell does pelo bueno mean? There's no such thing as good hair.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it's just hair. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's sad. I remember my mom tells the story of her aunt. She married a Dominican man, and the Puerto Rican family didn't come to the wedding. You know what I mean?
You're Puerto Rican Dominican too.
I'm Puerto Rican, but my cousins are have like a Dominican father. My close cousin, my mom's first cousin, her uncle is Dominican. So the Puerto Rican side of the family boycotted that entire wedding because she was marrying a Dominican, which is crazy to even think about. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're self-hating on one another.
It's so sad because we would be so much. I'm sorry, I'm eating. I'm hypoglycemic, and my eyes would be.
No, get busy. It's all good.
Donna brought me something to eat because she knew it was about to go down.
No, you're good.
But the funny thing is when you start thinking about it, it's like there's a lot of that, right? And we only know with regards to us Caribbeans, right? But it's the same thing with Nicaragua and Costa Rica.
Yes, it's everywhere.
Like, Rica is better than them, and Panama and Colombia. Like it's so funny. If you look at it from a logical perspective, it is so ridiculous, right? Like, imagine if Jewish people were like that. If they'd be like, oh, no, he's from Poland. You know, they're not that smart.
Right.
There's none of that.
Well, that's the thing. There kind of is forms of that, too. Like Hasidic Jews, like the level of how you practice. It's like human beings are fiending to divide themselves. But then it's like people of color, we're like, we exactly. But
because they're Jews.
It's true. Yeah.
So even if you don't believe in the way they practice, they will still have a Jewish person's back over another person. But a Latino will throw another Latino on the bus for a white person in a minute.
True. And that's where a lot of gentrification came from too. And that's what I saw that firsthand. Like, you know, like landlords and property owners kicking out their own people because they know the college student was willing to pay 2 to 3 times more rent and being lied to. Like that happened to my cousins, my aunts, you know what I mean? Like on a first-hand basis. And it's just like, man, like we have to hold ourselves accountable for like this as much as we just like, aside from just blaming and pointing out the errors of others, like, man, we have to keep ourselves in check, because I also learned that like a lot of this is generational, and I have faith that as long as we keep speaking and acting on our beliefs, there's going to be change. Like, for example, I teach the elders in my family to not be racist and point out where they're racist at, and point out the history of why they were taught like differentiation between hair and classifying one as better than the other, or skin, or even like, you know, obviously like Latinos are just racist as fuck, like, especially the older ones. So like coming here, I had to educate my parents, like, yo, like your perspective, for example, on African Americans, on Black people is skewed because you moved into the projects in Bed-Stuy in the 90s. So the only Black people you met, you know what I'm saying, it's in an impoverished neighborhood. Now, if you would have moved to Washington Heights, you would have been like, oh shit, okay, wait, your slate is a little bit cleaner because the people who are doing crime and selling drugs or whatever around you are Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and people you identify as yourself. But because of where you moved and where you're from, and you have limited knowledge, and in Dominican Republic, you're just taught how whatever somebody else's racism and experience was is what you deem as fact. It's like now you have to come here and you already are like setting up a difference and a border between like true understanding and just somebody else's perspective and limited knowledge. And I feel like it was my responsibility as a child, you know, growing up, like, because I'm raised there, most of my best friends are like Black. So it's like, nah, like, this is where you're wrong. This is where the education actually is. No, this is who this person is. And it's like, then I start having best friends, and then you just start unpacking like, oh shit, I was wrong. You know what I mean? I was generalizing. And we do a lot of that, you know, even with the rush of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, a lot of it is just land in New York. At least for me specifically, it's land in New York, because Puerto Ricans immigrated here like a decade before us. So then it's like, oh, they have their cliques and their blocks and whatever.
But y'all taking over.
So we have to do others. But you know what I mean? Just like unpacking into what the information is. Why is there this divide that has been built over for decades? You know what I'm saying? Aside from just like wanting to be prideful of where you're from. And it's like, nah, that shit is not important.
Yeah, you know, I lived in Washington Heights and the Bronx when I was little. So the funny thing is that in my head growing up, I didn't grow up with that difference in my head, because in New York, everybody that was around me was Puerto Rican or Dominican. Right? Because the divide is now more now, right?
Yes.
Back in the day, it was us against the world, right? So it's different, because that's why my father married my Puerto Rican mother.
Right.
And it wasn't completely different, but it was different. I think people have become even more segregated, and that it services segregation, environmental, racism or discrimination, oppression. Like, we have so much. It's become so profitable to divide people, right? And so it's just unfortunate for us that we've allowed that rhetoric to take space in our heads, because it really does play itself out in our everyday practices. And it's just a lot of work. But Latinos, we don't have a collective voice, and we don't have a collective economy, because we will spend our money on a white movie, or we'll go to a white store before we will our own. And if you're Dominican, you know, I ain't going to that Puerto Rican store. And if you're Puerto Rican, I ain't going to that Cuban store. You rather go buy an Apple phone. You rather go watch a white movie, but you won't watch a TV show, Nicky Jam show. Oh, I'm Cuban. I ain't watching them damn Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. Like, I hear all the comments. So the thing is that is why we don't have a voice in media. You know, we don't. In The View, it took them 20 years to put a Puerto Rican woman on, a Latina, for the chair, like to sit there every day,
yes.
Right. Not as a guest. Rosie Perez came. I went and auditioned for the show. I wasn't famous enough, so they put Rosie on. We have the same agent. But I was just like, even today, to get Puerto Ricans and Dominicans on television, to be Puerto Ricans and Dominicans is really, really hard. They always got to play Cuban. They'll play Mexican. All of the TV shows, look at them. Even you'll see Dominican actor playing a Cuban or playing a Mexican, it's so hard for us to exist because their idea of us is like we're the ghetto people of the Latinos. It's so much work. And so for me, that's why I was like, if I can't have it the way I want it, I don't want it, because I'm not participating in that.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I love that.
I don't want to take too much of your time, but so we'll kind of keep it moving. But I do think obviously we have a lot of work to do internally, you know what I mean? And I think these conversations are important, and I think there are a lot of conversations like this happening, which are great that we are taking responsibility for it. And you see it in the music as well. You see the J Balvins of the world considering Puerto Rico their second home and like really embracing one another, and El Alfa in Dominican Republic, and then really bridging the gap, with the Bad Bunnies of the world, which is amazing to see. And I think that's a start to unity. But now, on the outside things that we have to change, outside of ourselves. I'm curious your thoughts on the whole Biden thing. Obviously, I'm sure you saw some of the stuff that came out of the Charlemagne interview.
Oh man!
And it's funny because right before that, you had like maybe a week or so or 2 weeks before that, I saw a post you had on your Instagram. You were talking about not all Latin women have the same point of view. You know what I mean? Just because we're Latin, we don't have the same point of view. So I thought it was interesting that then now he just basically put a whole bunch of people together that they should have the same exact perspective. So I'm curious your thoughts on seeing the whole Biden thing.
So the thing is that I texted with Charlemagne. We were talking about this, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a very difficult conversation to have because we're polarized right now. Donald Trump has done such a horrible job, right? And that now anything that isn't against Donald Trump is for him.
Right.
But I am of the belief, like Charlemagne, right? And even what Puffy said, even though the problem is the messenger. So Puffy has not been activated the whole time. Never said anything during the time where all these other people were in play, didn't endorse anybody. Now you want to come in the ninth inning and say, hold your vote. You can't tell people not to vote.
Right.
But I do agree. I do believe that what you got on it is important. Like, what do you want for... Like, I think Joe Biden, and this is the thing of people will say to me, well, he's not in office yet. He can't have policies yet. He's not in office. That's not true. You could have, if you would have said, oh, they got something wrong with right knees and people that are over 60. Elizabeth Warren would have came up with a policy for that. She had a policy for everything.
Yes. Yeah. That's what they say. You come in with policies. That's part of the reason why people elect you.
So I want to know, and I agree with D.L. Hughley. We have to sit down collectively, right? We go to Latinos and say, hey, what do we need? What do we want? We got to put the pressure on this man. This man has to say, okay, when I'm in office, this is my beginning steps. And I feel the same way because this is the thing that irritates me. When people say Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, what do you think is going to change drastically for people of color when Joe Biden is in office? There has never been a president in office that has been good for people of color. Our conditions have never improved.
Right.
Them giving us, giving us scraps off of the table is not them improving our conditions when we deserve a seat at the table.
Right.
When you sit here and you tell me, oh, Joe Biden, because Obama, because what did exactly happen?
His proximity isn't great.
Right.
It's insulting, right? It's embarrassing to hear that. That was like Bill Clinton was on the Arsenio Hall show playing the saxophone.
Right.
Yeah, so now you're good.
And look at the damage that the Clintons did to people of color, right? Through the judicial and the legislative system. So what I'm saying is you got to hold these people accountable and you got to say, what is it? I would like to sit down, this Black caucus, this Latino caucus, all of these people are getting their pockets laced. So they're sitting up here saying, oh, we want Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. But the thing is, what is Joe Biden going to do that's going to change the conditions of our people in this country? Because the reality of it is that's what it's come down to. The only difference it will be is that we don't have to hear Donald Trump every day.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. He's not going to go away because if Biden becomes president, you think that Donald Trump's Twitter is going to go away? That's where he communicates the most.
Right.
You think y'all gonna shut Donald Trump down and his MAGA followers?
Right. His base.
You know what I mean? What is gonna change that's gonna improve the conditions of the people?
Yeah.
And we need to sit down collectively and say, we need some funding in the education space. We need some help in the real estate space. because those are the things that where you have power, right? Real estate, ownership of land.
Absolutely.
So if all of these banks are not giving loans to us, and all of the people come to our communities and take space, and we can't even buy our own land in our own neighborhoods, what does it matter who's in office?
Yeah.
You don't think Donald Trump's mouth anymore?
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear about what is going to actually change. For me, it is not enough to get rid of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is just voicing the hatred and bigotry that this country was built on.
Yeah.
He ain't doing nothing out of that. May be, people are like, oh, but you know who it is? It's white people, because they're like, oh my God, he's saying it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't that. We're not. Are you shocked?
No.
You see the white man?
Nobody's surprised.
No, we're not shocked. So when these people are like, oh, we got to get Donald Trump out of office, our very lives depend on it. Really? They kill more people, the cops killed more people when Obama was in office.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There were more people deported when Obama was in office.
Yep.
So what do you think, what has gotten so bad for us that we're, and I'm not a Donald Trump supporter by anyway, and I will not be voting for him.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to know is, my vote is worth something. What are you going to give us? And this whole rhetoric, oh, he could have called us anything, I'm still voting for Joe Biden. That's exactly why they treat us the way that they do, because they know that we don't hold ourselves to a certain standard.
Right.
They have a problem with that shit.
Yeah, I mean, they know that they have our loyalty no matter what they do, because they have the Democratic name next to their name on the ticket. That's a problem,
It's harmful to us at times than the Republican Party, because the worst people to us are the ones who claim that they're helping us, and they use the black and brown people as, this is the party of the black and brown people. But logic will just dictate, look at the conditions of black and brown people and tell me how they've improved with any of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, listen, I know you've been running around all day, so I don't want to take a bit more of your time, but I love hearing these conversations from you. I want to encourage you to keep doing it on social media, on Instagram. Yes. I know people give you shit, but it's important to be in people's faces.
Fuck them. Like just like how you were like, yo, if I'm gonna go into, you're making me want to. I'm like, yo, I should invest in AT&T because they're part of HBO, and you have a show coming HBO. I'm like, yo, like I need to rock with that. You know what I'm saying? Like I think, ever since I first heard you, I'm like, man, like this woman is awake. You know what I mean? Like you have no problem being yourself. You have no shame in like showcasing your past and what you think the future should look like. And in the art, it's expressive, and in you as a human being, it's expressed. And I think that you are part of that change already. You know what I'm saying? Like we can call out what we do, but it's like a platform like this, for example, where it's like, nah, we need to come and honor Aida. Because it's like you're somebody who's like doing the work, like fame is important. And that's the thing. Fame is important because people are attracted to it. If it was something else, then that's what it would be. But people love fame. People love celebrity. People love the proximity between who they've admired. But the difference is, once you have that attention, what do you do with it? You know what I mean? And you're doing it correctly. Because I feel seen in it,
I would love, and listen, have me back. I will come back and we can have more conversations.
Absolutely.
And my show is written around Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and
Beautiful.
They will Puerto Ricans and Dominicans.
Do you know when it's coming out or no? Not yet.
We don't know if it's coming out.
You just turned it in, right?
Yeah, that's right. You were saying that.
We get notes this week or next week, and then we'll see. And if they do it, I'm happy, because it's going to be Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and it's going to be our stories without making us look like clowns.
I love it. Well, listen, I'm praying that all comes through, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And watch Nicky Jam's show. It's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
What you mean? But watch the whole thing.
Yeah, we're on that.
Come on. I told you, Ramos. You got to watch the whole thing. The whole thing. It's good. It's important for people to see, oh, shit, you can go to zero. And with the right people and faith in God and good energy, like you will rise right back up.
People speaking Spanish, Puerto Ricans, spectrum of us. Like it's like lo más blanco, lo más negro, the beauty of our family. There's nothing more beautiful to me. My script, the very first word is bendición to my grandmother. And I love it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
We are, so
yeah, it's true. He represented for the uprising, for the upcoming. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. But yo, keep doing your thing. I'm cheering you on.
Thank you. I'm coming back.
All right, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. All right. Ida Rodriguez, First Generation Talks.
Yo, I love everybody. Peace.